All right. Welcome to We Are Not Doing a Podcast featuring Mark Weber and Jarrett Lease. Guess what the world wanted? More white people just talking about sports. So, this is a New York sports focused podcast. For those of you who do not know Jarrett and we did a radio show out in Syracuse back when we were in college. It was a Syracuse basketball, football, and even lacrosse postgame show. Now we've kind of gone away from that, and we just really miss doing a podcast with each other and doing a show with each other. So now we're doing a New York focused podcast. And if you really want to see how New York it is, Jared's got the Empire State Building right behind him. So
doesn't get much better than that, right?
Yeah. So, all right. So, do you want to just talk a little about what this podcast is going to be before we get to it?
So the biggest reason why I want to do the podcast, Mark, is because at Syracuse, my claim to fame was I was the voice of Syracuse lacrosse. And quite frankly, I hated lacrosse. I just needed to get that name out of my reputation. So ever since we graduated school 8 years ago, you've been bugging me to do a podcast. And I was like, Mark, we're not doing a podcast. It's never going to happen. We've got our own lives. We got to move past the broadcasting days. And sure enough, 8 years later, we finally have decided to do a podcast together. So we're going to be talking some New York sports, mix in some other fun things with it, digress on certain topics, but I'm excited to do it. Let's get the ball rolling for sure.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of New York sports, probably going to do some sports media, some of the gossip, pretty much like it's just like what every podcast is right now, just two normal dudes talking sports, except the thing is we get along, but I do not respect a lot of his opinions on sports most of the time. So that's what's going to make this kind of like the Jewish version of Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith.
Well, our first one is in Zoom. So, I mean, the next time we do it in person, some may think that like I'm going to strangle you or you may strangle me. So we're testing the waters first to see over Zoom, see how it goes. But I think it's going to be pretty good. I'm pretty confident in that.
Yeah, and we're only not that far away from each other in the city. So if I need to get a hold of him, I'll find the way. All right. So first off, and it kind of feels weird just doing topics right off the get go like that. The biggest thing in New York sports that Jared and I have been texting each other nonstop about is whether or not Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Jet. So I think to frame it differently and not frame it the same way that everyone does is, will Aaron Rodgers be a Jet, or how will Aaron Rodgers look as a Jet? I want to pose this question. What would you do for Aaron Rodgers to be in a New York Jets uniform? It's likely not going to happen, but what would you do for that to happen?
Oh my God, what would I do? I mean, Mark, the best Jets quarterback that we've had in our lifetime was Chad Pennington. And we love Chad Pennington. I love Chad Pennington. But the guy had a noodle arm, and we just have not seen good quarterbacks at any point in our lives. It has just been so freaking miserable. So the fact that I hear some people contemplating they would prefer Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo or Ryan Tannehill, I mean, you got to be kidding me with that shit. Honestly, like, get Aaron Rodgers in a New York Jets uniform. And you know what the funny thing is about all this, Mark? I'm confident that this is going to happen because I really do believe deep down Woody Johnson is thinking like the common Jet fan in this scenario. Now, he doesn't have a great knowledge of football, but when it comes to the splash, the big time move, he has a pulse on what he wants to do with that. So I'm definitely confident that Rodgers will be a Jet. And I mean, what would I do? God, I mean, I would probably honestly maybe give 2-3 months of a salary of a job that I'm working in to just get Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform. I would do literally whatever it takes to see number 12 or maybe a different number that he's going to be rocking. That's the biggest other topic to talk about when it comes to Rodgers with the Jets. But I would do a whole lot to see Aaron Rodgers with the discount double check in green and white for sure.
So I'm someone that likes to wear my mask a lot in public. I'll wear it indoors. So I will boldly say this about Aaron Rodgers. I would let him cough and sneeze in my face if that were all it took for him to be a New York Jet. If he said, Mark, The only way I will ever join the disaster of a franchise that is the New York Jets, all I have to do is just cough and spit in your face. By all means, go for it. Go for it. This guy is a top 3 quarterback the last 3 years in the NFL. And of course, I was fact checking Jarrett. Chad Bennington actually is the best quarterback we've seen for the Jets in our lifetime. If that's not the most depressing sentence, I don't know what is. It has worked before. They have gotten Brett Favre, and Brett Favre did come to the Jets. Of course, he did finish the season with a winning record, but he, of course, lied that he had a torn forearm. His arm was pretty much falling apart, and I couldn't really finish the season too well after that. They've had other guys that have worked. Vinny Testaverde was a very successful quarterback for the Jets. That was probably going to be my initial guess on who was going to be the greatest quarterback in our lifetime for the Jets. But yeah, it is actually Chad Pennington. And do you think that's like too crazy to say that coughing and spitting in the face is a little too much to get Aaron Rodgers, or is that's appropriate?
For you, yes, that is definitely crazy because you are still rocking the mask these days, even though I gave up on that a long, long time ago. But
in March 2020, probably.
But if Aaron Rodgers does come to the Jets, Mark, it could only be a best case scenario compared to Brett Favre because, I mean, let's be honest here, Brett Favre was only here for 1 year. Things really didn't go particularly well down the stretch. Brett Favre had a little bit of an issue personally, sending a picture of the you-know-what to Jen Sturgis. So that was a little bit of an issue. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to have that problem. And quite frankly, 15 years later, Brett Favre is also known as a criminal. So Aaron Rodgers can do his ayahuasca. He can go into his darkness retreat. He can do whatever the hell he wants to do. He can make fun of Governor Kathy Hochul. He can make fun of Eric Adams. I do not care. Get that man in green and white. Let's go. Get Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform.
Well, I don't think you would care if he made fun of any politicians, no matter what. Just knowing.
Oh, I'd be all for it. I'd be all for it.
That would be too much of an issue.
I'd be all for it. Sign me up all day, please.
If you were to pick any touchdown celebration for Rodgers to do, boldest, craziest thing for him to do, what do you think it would be?
I mean, he's not really like the flashiest guy in the field. The only thing he really does is the discount double check. I mean, he would have to play for the Jets for maybe another 10 years to just destroy a team like the Dolphins or Patriots so he can say, I own you the way he did to the Chicago Bears. I mean, he's not really the flashiest guy on the field and particularly during the season. The only thing that Aaron Rodgers just makes his headlines really is during the offseason when he's deciding what he's going to do with his career. I mean, he's always kind of up in the air if he wants to play or not. I think Aaron Rodgers deep down knows what he's going to do. But, I mean, as far as on the field, I don't think he's going to do anything particularly too flashy. Quite frankly, let Garrett Wilson do all the celebrating. Let Breece Hall do all the celebrating when he gets back healthy. Elijah Moore, when he's throwing 30-plus touchdown passes to all those guys. Quite frankly, I don't think any of that flash will be coming with Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform.
You don't want it to do ayahuasca or whatever it is. Do you even know what ayahuasca is? How does someone use ayahuasca? I have no idea. I never heard of it until Aaron Rodgers mentioned it, to be honest.
I mean, I really wasn't following too much of the hot ayahuasca stuff, but now that he's been in the rumors more when it comes to the Jets, I mean, quite frankly, I've been looking up darkness retreats all the time, and I've been contemplating with myself, how would you do a darkness retreat? What would you do? I mean, how long would you do it for? I mean, quite frankly, I would do it for a day. I don't think it would be that big of an issue. And if you told me, going back to your original question, Mark, if you told me I had to go into a darkness retreat with no phones, no lights, no nothing for 30 days, I'm doing it. I am doing it. I will do whatever it takes to get Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform.
30 days. That's bold.
I would probably come out having to go into a mental institution, but quite frankly, we watch enough Jet games, so I probably belong there in the first place.
What about a full 162 Met game season?
In terms of what? In terms of
the darkness retreat.
God. I mean,
you wake up and you not wake up and you get out finding whether or not they're in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, the whole perspective of the Mets has changed now in the sense of Steve Cohen being the owner. I mean, the playoffs were never a thing of reality for the Mets. Now it's the norm. I mean, now it's the expectation. I mean, the Mets have almost become the new Yankees in the sense of what happens over the course of April through September doesn't really matter. It's just wake me up in October. So I know, Mark, you're a Yankee fan. I'm a Met fan. And I've always been just like, God, it's like you don't even care about what happens those months when I've been living on edge every single day. But now we're in the same boat when it comes to those two teams as far as wake me up when October begins, because the Mets have those expectations out for sure.
All right, given baseball expectations, pitchers and catchers, are you excited? Is you smell the rosebuds? What's going on?
I absolutely love pitchers and catchers. I don't know what it is about it. When I start seeing the videos
What
of
is
guys,
it about pitchers and catchers? It's guys having a catch in Florida.
it's just
It means
it's
nothing.
the weather. It's the weather. When I see guys report to Florida or to Arizona, when I see the sunshine, I see the palm trees, I see the golf courses out in Arizona. I even saw in Port St. Lucie they built a putting green at the Mets facility, which is very exciting. I would love to go check that out. But it's this time of year when we're just miserable in the dreck of the New York winter, even though it hasn't been too bad this winter for us.
But it was 67 today.
I know, but it's always dark, it's gray, it's gloomy. It's just you always get the butterflies going. You always get excited about it. You always see what the players are rocking, the new spring training hats, new spring training sweatshirts. Always checking the Nike website to see when it's going to become available so I can be a sucker and buy more Met stuff. You can buy more Yankee stuff, but I'm always into it. And as you know, Mark, I mean,
how
baseball.
Many spring training Mets sweatshirts do you realistically own?
Spring training Mets sweatshirts? I mean, of that particular one, zero. But I own too many Mets stuff. I'm an absolute sucker with that stuff. I mean, anytime I see what a player is wearing that I like in particular, I'm immediately going on the website. I'm buying it. It's a bad habit of mine that I quite frankly need to get over. I mean, we're both in our 30s, and I don't think we're ever going to get over it. But spring training always gets the juices flowing for me. I just love baseball. I love just seeing the guys have a catch, throw bullpens. I'm probably the lone wolf of us being millennials in that category. I fully admit that I am an absolute loser when it comes to that interest. But you know what? Give it to me 10 out of 10 times. I will watch spring training highlights over and over and over again. I absolutely love it.
I'm not a big spring training guy. I mean, when I was in high school,
I get it.
It was a big deal. Love seeing the prospect. Yankees have an exciting year this year when it comes to spring training because of Anthony Volpe and Jason Dominguez, but they're playing against other guys that are trying to make the major leagues. Like, you don't have Corbin Burns going out there, Justin Verlander going out there and pitch against Dominguez, pitching against Volpe, seeing what it doesn't mean anything. Remember Yasiel Puig hit like 400 in spring training one year, and everyone thought this guy was going to be Ted Williams, and he actually was pretty good, almost made the All-Star team in his rookie season, but it doesn't mean anything, doesn't do anything. And I hate golf, and I'll say it this way. Spring to me is when you hear Jim Nance's voice live from Augusta. Everything else is just a facade. Pitchers and catchers, facade. Spring begins when the Masters starts. And I know the MLB season starts before that, but to me, spring starts when you hear the Masters. I'll actually go a little back because the official start to spring is the Masters. The unofficial is when you first start hearing those Masters with Jim Nance doing the promo during the NCAA tournament. That is the best turn of any season of the year. That one moment in March on CBS.
Oh, 100%. I mean, once you get March Madness going, you get the Masters, you get the start of the season, the baseball season. The golf clubs start coming out, even though I know you're not a big golf guy, unlike myself. But, but this time of year, it's been crazy. I mean, there's been we haven't even had a winter. So I think that's why I'm also even more excited about pitchers and catchers this year, considering like we just haven't even had any sort of winter, no snow, no nothing here in New York. So I just feel like it's even more around the corner than it usually would be in years past.
Yeah, I mean, and you know how it's really really warm out in New York City when Jarrett's not even in Miami at this time of the year. I mean, that's all you need to know.
I'm always depressed about that. You know that.
Speaking of people that are not in Miami, potentially yet, Kevin Love. Kevin Love this has been the longest process in the world, I feel like. Last night, at like 1 a.m, you got reports that Kevin Love is potentially going to get bought out by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Probably by the time we ever post this, that will happen. Potentially, who knows? The Cavaliers have until March 1st to do such a thing. The Knicks 2 roster spots. Kevin Love. Does it make sense? Does he belong in New York and not Miami? Because it's just as nice as Miami at this time of year.
Do you see what I'm doing? Let's get Kevin Love and Carmelo Anthony back for those 2 open roster spots. Why not? I mean, why not? I mean, let's just do it for the vibes. Honestly, let's just get Kevin Love in the Garden. Let's get Carmelo Anthony back in the Garden. I mean, the Knicks are playing really well right now, even more so ever since the Josh Hart trade. But I mean, I would take Kevin Love.
Josh Hart trade. That's been how many games?
3 games, and they've looked pretty darn good so far during it. The thing that I've liked the most
3 games is 3 games.
But it's of course it's a small sample size. But the thing that I do like the most, Mark, in these 3 games since they've acquired Josh Hart, every time I've watched the Knicks game when they've had the lead, a pretty big lead, I've always been expecting, all right, it's going to get tight in the 4th quarter. It's going to come down to the wire, and we're going to see how they close games. The past few games, they've had that step on the throat mentality with Josh Hart. And I've been texting you back and forth. I've been calling Josh Hart a dog. And I really think he's been bringing that mentality to this team. You know, they've been up by like 15 in some of these games, and they have stepped on the throat of the Hawks, the Nets, and, you know, the Jazz game the other night was close, but these past 2 games, they were very impressive to me. So I've really been liking what I've seen so far from this Knicks team. But as far as Kevin Love, I would love to see it. You would love to see it. I just don't see it happening. I don't see Kevin Love being a Tom Thibodeau type of guy. I don't know if Leon Rose is going to be interested in that. And, I mean, let's be real here. If they were to sign Kevin Love, he would basically take Obi Toppin out of the rotation. We know Tom Thibodeau is not going to the 10-man rotation. We saw once they acquired Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, he's out of the rotation. So, I mean, realistically, I just don't see Obi not getting minutes, even though his minutes essentially now are nothing. I mean, all he does is really stand in the corner and take some threes, which that's not his game. I mean, that's a totally different topic to argue about when it comes to Obi Toppin's usage and how he's being used. But
we'll have a dedicated episode to Obi Toppin's usage. Don't worry.
Absolutely. But I would love to see Kevin Love in a Knicks uniform because I do think he's a better 3-point shooter at this point than Obi Toppin. I just don't know.
You may be a better 3-point shooter at this point than Obi Toppin.
I mean, probably not. Honestly, that's the one sport I brag about my sports ability. Basketball is not one of them at all. But
and yet, I don't. How does it feel for those listening that he has played in the Carrier Dome and you probably haven't? And he's saying that about himself.
Oh my God. I mean, that's probably the last time I even played basketball. honestly, like after that, I mean, between the lighting in the dome and taking shots up there, I couldn't hit rim to save my life. I'm like, you know what? 8 years ago, that was the last time I need to play any sort of competitive basketball. So I'm done playing that sport. But Kevin Love, I'd love to see it. I don't think it's going to happen, but a man can dream. A man can certainly dream about it.
I mean, it looks like Miami's a favorite, and like everyone wants to go to Miami. Jarrett wants to be in Miami.
Get Russell Westbrook in a Heat uniform just so he can screw that team up, and that could be one less team for the Knicks to worry about for the top 6. Get Russell Westbrook in a Heat uniform. Destroy the Heat culture, Russ. Please do that.
All right. I mean, that could be an option, but it could also get Kevin Love to the Heat because there'd be a UCLA Bruins reunion. Final Four team, 2008. Who could forget? I think Kevin Love would be a great addition to this team. Just putting in my 2 cents over there. Aside from Josh Hart, Jarrett's only mentions, played a few games for the Knicks. The only Knick that has shot better from 3 this season is Jalen Brunson, which is just crazy to think about. And Kevin Love's only
who's not in the 3-point contest. Who is not in the 3-point contest, and the other Knick, Julius Randle, is.
Well, that's because of the hotel and logistics. That's why. I want to see Bam Adebayo. I want to just see centers. I know Bam Adebayo has, I believe he won it in 2020. I would love to see just big man just go out there, but Julius Randle, why is he doing this? Well, I don't get it. That's
just adding to the lack of interest in All-Star weekends. Just add to it.
But Kevin Love, I think would be a great fit for the Knicks, plays defense, and I really think he could fit in that Taj Gibson role that we saw during the 2021 playoff run for the Knicks. It makes sense. The older veteran leadership guy. And plus, I know there's all the locker room stuff you could talk about. Kevin Love is still a good player. I don't know why the Cleveland Cavaliers treated him like he was some dog that was ready to go out the pasture, but he's a good player. Good defense, good defender. The numbers really show it, 35% from three. He's got a positive defensive win shares, and he's a good player. Now, Jared mentioned the All-Star break. Now it's time for the segment that we've been really looking forward to. My guess is if we continue doing this, which hopefully we should just for the fun of it, it's going to turn into
until I'm canceled.
Until Jared's canceled by episode 3. What will be more, Josh Hart's current game in the Knicks or Jared Lease getting canceled from a podcast? The world will find out.
The latter.
This segment, with it or not with it. So Jared and I have a thing where we always like to say whether something is with it or not with it. How would you explain something being with it and something not being with it?
With it would certainly be, let's say, I don't know, like a football game that's on TV or a basketball game that's on TV or
really specific.
Any sporting event that's on TV that would catch the interest of the non-casual sports fan. Like, for example, if, like the other night, I was saying to you, Knicks versus Nets was with it because it's New York. It's a New York rivalry. I think people who aren't really too much into sports, they would have an interest in it. Whereas Knicks versus the Charlotte Hornets, that's definitely not with it. The non-casual sports fan is not interested in that nonsense. So, I mean, fun stuff like that would be with it. Boring logistical sports stuff is definitely not with it. You bring your advanced analytics stats that I will never, ever understand. Non-casual fan, that's not with it. So I think the audience probably would get the gist of with it or not with it by now.
I'll be quick before I pose the question. I would say with it is whatever the best looking girl who just has every social option on the planet would do. And for a guy that is just the type of person that just could go to whatever social scene he wants at all times, that is the definition of with it. Will they be interested? It should be the key demographic for everything. Who cares about 25 to 49 demographics, 1835 demographics that we see from Nielsen? Screw Nielsen. What we need is with it or not with it. So that being said, Jared gave his take. NBA All-Star game. The whole weekend, with it or not with it.
So going back to my explanation on with or not with it, disregard everything I just said. What you said, spot on. So that is the accurate description of with or not with it. All-Star weekend. I mean, at this stage now, it's not with it at all. I mean, I literally looked up who's in the dunk contest. I mean, who are these guys? I mean,
Jericho, you don't know Mac McClung?
Exactly. Matt McClung, is he like the 17th man? Is he the 17th man on the Sixers on a 15-man roster? I mean, who is that? Like Kenyon Martin has a son who's in the NBA. Is he even good? Is he good, Mark? Like, honestly, I don't know this shit.
I think he's got in minutes. The fact that I can't answer that question off the top of my head.
Exactly. I mean, you're watching like EuroLeague FIBA basketball like at 4 a.m, and I don't even know who these players are. The guy on the Sixers, I don't know. I mean, we like Jericho Sims.
You said his name and you just went back to the guy on the Sixers.
No one outside of a psychotic Knicks fan like us knows who Jericho Sims is. So, I mean, the dunk contest is not with it. And to top it off, you put Julius Randle. I love him. I love Julius Randle. He's had an amazing year. He's an all-star, well-deserved this year. Jalen Brunson should also be an all-star. But Julius Randle's in the three-point contest? He can't shoot threes outside of the first quarter. I mean, he can't shoot threes at all. So I don't understand just the placement of the players in these contests. So that makes it terrible. And I mean, the game itself is just so bad. I mean, the fact more and more and more each year that there's no defense, I am convinced one of these years we're going to have an all-star game where like the final score is 375 to 330 in a 4-quarter game. So, I mean, it's not with it. It's definitely not with it. No way.
I have a take when it comes to the All-Star game weekend. First off, the 300-point score would be impossible for the All-Star game because they now do that Elam ending thing that they took from the tournament. So that shows that. And also, how many points per game would you say that Kenyon Martin's kid averages for the Houston Rockets this season? Over, under 5? because it was bothering me.
Just
And you're going to be shocked when you hear the answer.
I don't know the answer to this question, but because you're posing the question, I will say over.
11 points per game.
Exactly.
That's good. It's good.
It's good, but I mean, is he good?
I mean, he's on the Houston Rockets. They're like in the Wemby sweepstakes. It's also started 25 games. He's the best of a bad bunch. Yeah. I'm going to go with this. The All-Star game, no one knows when it's going on, aside from nuts like us. The celebrity game, no one really knows except when they see it on the Instagram on the next day when they see that like Alex Toussaint, I know from Peloton, is playing in it. He's the only celebrity I can name that's in it. Dunk contest, 3-point shootout. I'm going to say is with it. Just because it's really fun to watch at a bar. And I think if you're out that night, because that's a night that you're going out because there's nothing really else going on, it's cold, you want to go out, you're going to be locked in and watching it. The Sunday before President's Day, I don't think if you're going out, you're going to be watching the NBA All-Star game. It just doesn't seem like dunk contest, 3-point shootout. It's fun when you're out. You're not going to surround your day around it. All right, Jarrett, we have 2 minutes left, probably just a little under before Zoom kicks us off. Any lasting thoughts going into the weekend?
I mean, right now, it's kind of a boring time in sports. I mean, the Super Bowl just ended last week. It was a great game, very anticlimactic ending. My take on the NBA All-Star game, it sucks. So, there's nothing really exciting about that. And, once we get out of the All-Star break, it's going to be a big final few weeks in the NBA. And I've always been saying this to you, like, I'm not the biggest NBA fan in the world. This NBA season's been pretty exciting. I will admit, like, there's been a lot of good vibes going on in the NBA this year. I think the fact that the Knicks are having a much better season than a lot anticipated is a very positive sign for the remaining schedule in the NBA season. And we'll see how it goes for the Knicks and also the Nets. It's going to be, I think the fact also with the Nets trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, the Knicks and Nets are the same exact team right now. They're 2 games between each other in the standings. So I think it's going to be a little fun rivalry going on between the Knicks and Nets to wrap up the remaining NBA schedule. So I'm looking forward to that once we get out of the All-Star break.
All right, there you have it. We are not doing a podcast. Well, we just did a podcast. So long, everybody, and keep tuning in and decide whether it's with it or not with it, this podcast. Hopefully it's with it. Hopefully it is.